I think there's a couple of buckets, big buckets of risk. There are the risks that you can control against. You can probably remediate or insure against. These are the things that are like the hard things, right? Where you say, if we're going to bring a whitelist a model or a wrapper for a model, it needs to check these 25 boxes, right? It needs to have like multi-factor authentication. It needs to be logging in. It's like kind of the same old things like we encountered with like the cloud back in the day when everybody panicked about data that shouldn't be in the cloud. It's in the cloud. But yeah, like representations from an entity, working with established entities that can indemnify you against any problems. Companies like the big companies like Microsoft. In fact, I think they actually do that, right? They indemnify you for anything. Ensure that your intellectual property is yours. You don't lose any property rights in your data. All of those things, I think you can get to a lower level of residual risk. I think the stuff that you can't, the known unknowns of this is the provenance of the model risk, which you cannot get to. I don't think you can get to an acceptable level where you say you've remediated to a low level. You just have to accept it because you believe the productivity gains are so strong. And that's things like the fact that you might use a model to create some valuable IP, like let's say a fraud model, or even just the software and the operating system for a vehicle or something like that. There's a possibility that somebody will come along and enjoin you from using that IP, or say they own it because their property was used to create your property and a court agrees with them. I think some of those things are still unresolved. And that's a huge risk that companies just are either blindly accepting, which I don't recommend, but I think there should be a governance process that quantifies those risks, or at least elucidates them in succinct statements and presents them to the executive leadership, so that the company can go in and say, this wasn't for a lack of having our eyes open, and we made a reasonable, calculated decision to do this.